Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining today. My name is Serena Stala, and I am the Biennial Implementation Plan Development Director, and have been working to develop this implementation plan with across agencies over the past year. And I'm joined today by Liz, who just spoke to you, who's our engagement director, and Meredith LaValle, who is our collaboration teams director. And I believe we also have Larry on the line. Larry, are you the 202 phone number?
And Larry, if you are, it's *6 to unmute.
I apologize. Yes, I'm the 202 number. So thanks everybody for joining.
All right, well, I will hand it over to Larry in just a moment, but we're going to spend a little bit of time today going over the new implementation plan. We're going to go over some of the objectives and deliverables and the research questions we've identified, but we're hoping to really have a good amount of time at the end of the webinar for questions and discussion. So if you have questions that come up during, feel free to throw them in the chat or raise your hand, but know that we will have some time at the end dedicated for discussion. So Larry, I'll pass it over to you if your connection's okay.
I can hear okay. I can't view any of the slides, and so I don't think I'll play a real integrated role, if that's okay, Serena, if you can help me out here. I
Sure.
will thank everybody for joining, and I'm really excited to be at this point. We've all worked so hard to get to this point, and it's really been gratifying to be, after all this time of working on developing this plan, to actually be sliding into implementation. So we're excited to play a role. We're really we're super gratified that we've got such great interest and engagement from the community, and we're going to do everything we can from the IARPC perspective to help move this along. So with that, I will just thank it and pass it back to Serena.
All right, thanks, Larry. All right, so as most of you are aware, in December 2021, last December, the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy released IARPC's Arctic Research Plan 2022 to 2026. And I want to recognize that many of you did participate in the plan development effort and joined us for the launch webinar back last December. And we're really grateful for your continued participation and your continued input. And we really wouldn't be where we are today without all of you. So thank you. The Arctic Research Plan is developed as a high-level research strategy to address emerging research questions about the Arctic. And what it does is present a research framework that outlines thematic goals and also a vision for federal agencies to address emerging research questions about the Arctic region. And in order for IARPC and federal agencies to respond more swiftly to emerging and immediate needs, including those caused by climate change, and also while continuing to support U.S. Arctic policy, the Arctic Research Plan is now going to be achieved through implementation plans that are updated every 2 years. So this first implementation plan is going to be implemented between now, fall 2022 and fall 2024. And we're really excited to be sharing this plan with you. And like I said, we're going to spend a little bit of time highlighting some of the key goals and deliverables, and then move on to a discussion. And we'd love to hear any thoughts you have, answer any questions, and really get a conversation going. So the implementation plan provides specific actions that IARPC and our member agencies will take to promote research aimed at improving community resilience and well-being, advancing scientific understanding of ongoing changes in the Arctic system, creating more sustainable economies and livelihoods, and improving risk management and hazard mitigation. Where the results of these concerted efforts will yield greater predictive capabilities and improve capacity for groups including Arctic communities, the state of Alaska, local and tribal authorities, research institutions, nonprofits, the private sector, international organizations, and federal agencies. We'll all work together to adapt to pressing environmental changes while also making more informed decisions. And we want to recognize that while this is a federal plan, we can't accomplish the goals and objectives of the plan without non-federal partners and without all of you. So we really do hope that you will all participate in implementation, and we're going to be highlighting ways that you can get involved a little bit later in the presentation. So this implementation plan responds to the priorities of the Biden-Harris administration in a number of different ways. All the priority areas in the implementation plan respond to and are linked to climate change. The changing climate in the Arctic impacts energy, water, food security, community health and resilience, natural resource development, infrastructure, commercial activities, ecosystem services, and hazard mitigation. And this plan is really interdisciplinary and positions federal agencies and our partners to better understand and effectively react to the effects of climate change in the Arctic. And it also positions us to be able to understand and respond to the impacts that a changing Arctic has on the rest of the United States and around the world. The plan also supports the administration's economic priorities by focusing on the needs of Arctic communities through the priority area on sustainable economies and livelihoods, and to the COVID-19 public health landscape through the priority area on community resilience and health. The plan also includes education, training, and capacity building as a foundational activity, with an emphasis on creating new opportunities for rural and Indigenous students and interweaving disciplinary academics and Indigenous knowledge. The plan builds on the administration's priorities for justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion, including tribal consultation and inclusion. And the plan includes participatory research and Indigenous leadership in research as a foundational activity. It identifies specific activities on increasing capacity in two directions, both within the federal government and research community to more effectively engage with Indigenous communities and supporting community-driven efforts to engage in and lead research. It also focuses on enabling communication and coordination among agencies, researchers, and communities, sustaining engagement and building trust. President Biden has also encouraged a whole of government approach to address the major challenges of our time. IARPC exists to foster collaborations and promote partnerships, both among federal agencies and with non-federal partners, such as universities, foundations, nonprofits, the private sector, research laboratories, international researchers, Arctic residents, and Indigenous organizations and communities. So through this implementation plan, IARPC can help provide the information essential to making science-informed decisions. Finally, this plan is also very well aligned with the White House's National Strategy for the Arctic region, which was released by the White House last month or earlier this month, end of last month. Like the National Strategy for the Arctic region, the plan identifies climate change, sustainable economies, and consulting and coordinating with Alaska Native tribes and communities is critical. So if you've read the Arctic Research Plan 2022 to 2026 or joined any of our information sessions over the last year, you should be very familiar with this framework diagram, which illustrates the structure of the Arctic Research Plan and also the implementation plan. So like I said, the Arctic Research Plan is written as a high-level strategy that outlines research goals. These goals are linked to 4 priority areas, which are community resilience and health, Arctic systems interactions, sustainable economies and livelihoods, and risk management and hazard mitigation. Where the previous plan really focused primarily on environmental processes, this new plan shifts to address societal issues that require more complex, and a more multidisciplinary approach. The plan is also informed by 5 foundational activities, which are outlined across the bottom of the framework diagram, and they are data management, education, training, and capacity building, monitoring, observing, modeling, and prediction, participatory research and Indigenous leadership in research, and technology innovation and application. So building off the framework of the Arctic Research Plan, the biennial implementation plan includes objectives, which are specific research actions that advance the goals of the Arctic Research Plan. And they also include deliverables, which are tangible, measurable, and easily communicated research products that demonstrate progress made towards satisfying the objectives and goals, and that are made available to decision makers and partners. So I'm going to hand it over to Liz to talk a little bit about engagement, and then we will dive into some of the specifics about the objectives and deliverables.
Sure, thanks, Serena. So the Arctic Research Plan and the implementation plan are federal documents, but non-federal partners are key to its success. So we could not possibly have created either of these plans without robust engagement from researchers and communities like all of you, many of whom actively participated in this process. So I just kind of wanted to step back and recap a little bit of the engagement we did to create this plan. So during the development of the Arctic Research Plan, we held 2 public engagement periods to inform the content of the plan and to receive feedback on the draft. We held webinars and sessions at conferences. We collected official comments through the Federal Register and conducted direct outreach to Indigenous communities, the state of Alaska, and other key communities. We used meetings, newsletter, radio, and other channels to do that outreach. And we also held a workshop to develop draft priority areas and foundational activities. So all of that went into the production of the Arctic Research Plan. And then many of the comments we received during those public engagement periods were on specific objectives and deliverables for Arctic research. So we drew on those comments when we drafted the implementation plan that's got those specific objectives and deliverables. And then coupled with that existing input, we held an additional 3-month public engagement period for input on what should be included in this implementation plan. So we also relied heavily on the IARPC Collaborations communities of practice, who helped us understand how existing IARPC Collaborations community could fit into and support the priorities of this new plan. So we're incredibly grateful. Thank you so much for everyone who engaged with us, often multiple times, to inform these plans. We really could not have done it without you. And Serena, I think back to you to speak about deliverables.
Great, thanks, Liz. So we're going to spend a little bit of time walking through the implementation plan, but we're going to stay at quite a high level. We just want to give you a flavor of the kinds of research priorities and questions that we're going to be working to address over the next 2 years. So overall, the Arctic Research Plan and the Implementation Plan has 4 priority area goals, which you'll hear more about shortly. And then under each of these goals are objectives, which, as I mentioned, are research actions that advance the goals. We have a total of 21 objectives outlined in this implementation plan. And then each objective identifies deliverables, which again are research products to be achieved in the next 2 years. And in this implementation plan, we've identified 90 deliverables, and they are centered around supporting research, for example, initiating funding projects with local partners, creating products. So this could be a report, a synthesis, or a tool, and coordinating information sharing. So for example, workshops or team meetings. So we're now going to highlight some of the actions in the new implementation plan. And like I said, we won't go through every deliverable. We'll just give you a flavor, but we do have the implementation plan available on the website, and we can drop it in the chat. So if there is a specific deliverable or objective you'd like to speak about, feel free to throw a question in the chat and we can address it. So the first priority area of the implementation plan, priority area 1, is community resilience and health. And it has the goal to improve community resilience and well-being by strengthening research and developing tools to increase understanding of interdependent social, natural, and built systems in the Arctic. Objectives under this focus area will focus on supporting the physical and mental health of Arctic residents through research on public health needs, disparities, and delivery, addressing emerging threats to food safety and access, as well as food and nutrition security in the Arctic through research that addresses how environmental change is affecting the abundance, accessibility, and use of traditional foods and traditional ways of life, and providing research and technical support for water and sanitation infrastructure. So for example, one of the deliverables in this priority area calls for research to be conducted on preventative measures for COVID-19 disease, and evaluate lessons learned for future pandemic preparedness in the Arctic. Another deliverable calls for investigations and a report on trends in abundance, distribution, and condition of ice-dependent marine mammals in the Bering, Chukchi, and Beaufort Seas to identify and forecast changes that may impact food security and the long-term sustainability of traditional food supplies. Our second priority area 2, Arctic Systems Interactions, has the goal to enhance our ability to observe, understand, predict, and project the Arctic's dynamic interconnected systems and their links to the Earth system. Objectives under this focus area will primarily look at advancing understanding of Arctic amplification and the associated connections with lower latitudes, observing, understanding, predicting, and projecting Arctic ecosystems change and the associated impact on humans and the entire Earth system, understanding interactions between social, ecological, and physical Arctic systems, particularly in the context of coastal climate and cryospheric change. So an example deliverable from the Arctic Systems Interactions priority area is to advance understanding of the role of atmospheric rivers in Arctic amplification, with a specific task of hosting a conference session either this coming year, 2023 or 2024. Another is to develop and assess ice sheet models for better prediction of sea level rise. Our third priority area, sustainable economies and livelihoods, has the goal to observe and understand the Arctic's natural, social, and built systems to promote sustainable economies and livelihoods. Objectives under this priority area focus on research to support the development of Arctic infrastructure. So this includes research on improvements in community capacity and infrastructure projects that are prioritized by Arctic communities to support resilience and leverage technology in community redevelopment and relocation efforts. This team is also going to improve understanding of the importance and value of existing and emerging market and non-market economies in the Arctic. So this includes supporting local access to Arctic economic opportunities by examining the linkages among economic initiatives, infrastructure, socioeconomic factors, and the values of rural Arctic communities. And another focus area for this priority area will be improving multi-species and ecosystem approaches to predict climate change impacts to species distributions and the economically viable access to commercial and subsistence species over the next 50 years. So one example deliverable for this priority area is to conduct a study to create an asset map of existing infrastructure as a baseline for understanding how to equip a community to be resilient to climate impacts. So this deliverable also includes facilitating the sharing of resources about known threats to infrastructure that's being impacted by climate change. Our fourth priority area, risk management and hazard mitigation, has the goal to secure and improve quality of life through research that promotes an understanding of disaster risk exposure, sensitivity to hazard, and adaptive capacity. So objectives under this focus area will include summarizing currently available data and information requirements associated with hazard and risk mitigation, adaptation and response efforts, synthesizing community-led activities and information to identify potential needs for future efforts, updating and improving the statewide threat assessment, identification of threats from erosion, flooding, and thawing permafrost in remote Alaska communities, and conducting and supporting research for more resilient and transformative infrastructure to withstand potential impacts from acute and long-term hazards. So one deliverable example here is to conduct a study focused on expedient and enduring cold regions infrastructure, including water, wastewater, energy, and temporary and enduring structures. So the results for this deliverable will be shared into a report that will identify and provide background information on a variety of available and emerging water and wastewater, energy, and structure technologies and best practices. So these priority areas, priority area objectives and associated deliverables are all supported by the 5 foundational activities that we mentioned earlier. But these foundational activities also, in many cases, identify their own objectives. So I'll run through those quickly, and then we can wrap this part up and have a discussion. So our first foundational activity, data management, is going to be working to encourage and implement fair and care data management principles in the Arctic. Education, training, and capacity building will be working on the development of a one STEM hub, so science, technology, engineering, and math hub that can serve as a nexus for all federal programs and communities who these programs serve. And education, just as a note, is one of the newer components of the Arctic Research Plan. And so we're happy to see it kind of taking on a foundational role over the next 2 years. Monitoring, observing, modeling, and prediction will be working to coordinate activities and communities of practice that bring together Arctic modeling, observing, monitoring, and prediction to advance Arctic research. They'll work to support assessment, gaps analysis, and the intercomparisons to understand observational and modeling needs. They'll support coordination and engagement with federal, international, and non-federal partners who are conducting monitoring, observing, modeling, and prediction in the Arctic. And they'll also support best practices in field observations and modeling. Our participatory research and Indigenous leadership and research team is going to be focusing on work to fulfill federal requirements to consult with federally recognized tribes and Alaska Native corporations, engaging Arctic communities and individuals in research in a way that's meaningful to them, and developing guidance for agencies to consistently apply participatory research and Indigenous leadership and research. And then finally, technology innovation and application will be playing a foundational role across all priority areas. They have not identified specific objectives for themselves in this current implementation plan, but will be playing a very supportive role of other priority areas and foundational activities. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Meredith to speak a little bit about the timeline, community organization, and upcoming ways to get involved.
Thanks, Nina. Hi, everyone. It is exciting. I'm really happy to share this with the wider IARPC community. So I'll touch a little bit on the timeline and what to expect moving forward. So the objectives in this plan are ones that we intend to meet over the next 2 years, so by fall of 2024. And towards the end of this implementation plan, we will begin the process of updating it. The update and release of the second implementation plan will be less extensive and occur over a shorter amount of time than the development of this first plan. And in the fall of 2024, IARPC will produce a public report detailing progress on deliverables, and the report will communicate outcomes and products that advance the understanding of Arctic processes and are relevant to Arctic communities and decision makers. It will also include how deliverables were made readily accessible as appropriate based on the nature of the topic. Okay, next slide. Thanks, Liz. The community organization is another important aspect of this plan. The plan represents a shift in the structure of IARPC collaborations. Many of the communities of practice that existed as collaboration teams under the 2017 to 2021 Arctic Research Plan will continue to meet, and their work is, of course, crucial in accomplishing the current plan. And in addition, we are adding teams that are specifically tied to priority areas and foundational activities. These teams will oversee progress towards accomplishing the objectives and deliverables within the implementation plan. We do anticipate that they will work very closely with the communities of practice. And like the communities of practice, priority area and foundational activity collaboration teams will be led by both federal and non-federal individuals. So if you or your organization is interested in leading one of these teams, please reach out to us. We would love to have broad involvement from the IARPC community. And Liz has dropped a link in the chat for how you can apply. So next is some information on the implementation launch workshop. Because we're transitioning to this new team structure and as part of our kind of standard annual cycle, IARPC will host a hybrid in-person and virtual workshop for federal and non-federal leaders of communities of practice and collaboration teams at the end of January. This workshop will establish and build connections among team leaders, many of whom are new to IARPC, as well as create space for teams to plan activities and make progress on the implementation in the coming year. And so at this workshop, leaders will be developing their annual work plans and joint activities on how to move forward. So while teams will continue to meet over the next few months between now and the end of January, you can expect to see a significant uptick in activity in February and beyond. So I will hand it over to Serena.
Thanks, Meredith. So with that in mind, we really hope you'll join us in implementing this plan. Like we said, while it is a federal plan, it really can't be accomplished without the support and efforts of the broader Arctic research community and Arctic communities. So our website, IARPC Collaborations, will continue to be the hub for sharing information and coordinating efforts in this plan. So if you're not already a member, we hope you'll become one. You can sign up for an account at iarpiccollaborations.org. And if you are a member, we encourage you to visit the site if you haven't in a while. You'll notice that the website has gotten a refresh, including that it works a lot better on mobile devices when you're on the go. And most importantly, we've added the new teams around priority areas and foundational activities. So we hope you'll consider joining many of these teams that you feel are relevant to your work, and you'll help us move ahead with implementation. So thanks, everyone. We really appreciate you joining this webinar today and for your time and participation both today and throughout this whole process. We do have about 30 minutes left if there are questions or discussion topics that you would like to bring up. I'm joined by the members of the Secretariat, and I believe there's also a number of drafting team participants and leads on the call. So yeah, with that, I will thank you and open it up for questions and discussion.
And I'll just jump in with a reminder that you're welcome to use both the chat or unmute yourself and ask a question directly. If you're on the phone, it's *9 to raise your hand and *6 to mute or unmute yourself.
Yeah, Jack, I see you have your hand up.
Sorry, I was waiting for someone else to be first, but I was just curious. I read through the implementation plan a while ago. I mean, probably the day after it was announced or it came out. And one thing I was really kind of puzzled by, or at least interested in understanding the backstory, is for the foundational activity on data management. I was kind of surprised that DoD is leading on all of the deliverables, and I was just curious, what part of the DoD has such big interest or expertise in fair access to data and open science? Because I don't tend to think of the Pentagon as being super sharing of everything that they know, but I was just wondering if anybody had any insight into that.
Yeah, so the DoD was very involved in the drafting of the data management section for the Arctic Research Plan and also for the implementation plan. And currently, Mike Brady is the data management federal team lead, along with Alan Pope from the National Science Foundation. So you'll notice that a lot of the data management deliverables are centered around kind of growing that community and holding meetings and open data sharing. So DoD being listed as a lead is largely due to the fact that a staff member of the DoD is the current federal lead. But there has been a lot of interest from other agencies in participating in the implementation of the data management deliverables. So it certainly won't only be Department of Defense. I know we've gotten a lot of interest from NOAA and from NASA and also from NSF. So it will be collaborative. But yeah, currently Mike will be leading that team along with Alan Pope, and he is DoD. And I believe he is, Meredith, do you know what agency? Because I think he switched recently.
If I'm not mistaken, he's with the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency.
Okay, thanks, Liz.
And this is Larry. Maybe I'll just jump in and just add for a second, so that we're really fortunate in a lot of respects. So for every one of these deliverables, there are multiple agencies involved, and so DoD has taken lead. But as Serena just mentioned, NSF has also played an important role. But many of our agencies, most of our agencies, have keen interest in data and are involved in some way. But I will take it just a bit further and say that DoD has actually been involved, across the board in many of the other priority areas and deliverables. In that the Department of Defense has a substantial interest in the Arctic right now, and are playing a greater role than they have in the past as far as through many avenues. So we are having really good engagement through Corral, the Cold Regions Research and Engineering Laboratory, but also through the Ted Stevens Center. And so there's a lot of participation, and we're really fortunate, and we're taking advantage of that engagement. I'll stop there. Thanks.
And I'll just draw, while we're waiting for the next question, I'll draw folks' attention to the comment that Jeff put in the chat, asking about the recording. Yes, this webinar is being recorded, and it'll be posted on the event page and on our YouTube channel. So if you missed part of it, or have colleagues who missed it, it'll be available definitely by the end of the week.
So I have a question. Can I go ahead? So I know the communities of practice are going to continue to meet. Are the priority area teams going to form around the same way, and members of the community can join those and participate in those? Or are they going to be handled differently than collaboration teams were in the past? And I guess that question also goes for the foundational activities.
Thanks, Sarah. That's a great question. Meredith, do you want to take a first stab at that?
Sure. Yes, I think in general, they will have their own teams that people can join, and we'll probably have meetings as well around their objectives and deliverables, and pull in the relevant communities of practice. I think we're still kind of now that things are public and we can start bringing in non-federal co-leads, giving those team leaders time to decide the form of their team and how it will function as well. I also think there will be a little bit of variety among the new teams. So for example, the Priority Area 2 team, which is very much based on a lot of the work that went into the last Arctic research plan, they might kind of rely more on the communities of practice that are already established, versus Priority Area 3, which is focusing on a new kind of subject for IARPC topic, for IARPC sustainable economies and livelihoods, which may try to build more of their own community from scratch.
I will just add, I put the link to where, if you are a member of IARPC Collaborations, you can join the newly formed teams. So they are on the website, and you can click join if you haven't already. And when you sign up, you're not making a commitment to take specific action, but rather you're going to get posts from the team in your weekly digest, and you'll be automatically invited to team meetings. So if you're interested in these topics, signing up for teams is a really good way to stay in touch.
And I'll make a note that for those of you who are planning on attending AGU, either virtually or in person, we will be having a town hall on, I believe it's that Tuesday, December 13th. So another great opportunity to come learn more about IARPC and get involved. Any other thoughts, questions, ideas? Yeah, I see a question in the chat from Alex, which I'll read for those of you who might not have access to the chat. So it said, as a newbie and learning about Arctic and IARPC, just want to thank you for the overview. I'm an epidemiologist with an interest in public health and the Arctic. Could you please speak more about the partnerships with local communities and infectious disease prevention and reporting in the implementation plan, if that is part of it? So that's a great question. Thank you. Our first priority area, community resilience and health, is absolutely recognizing the importance of strong partnerships with local communities. And we're in the process of identifying non-federal co-leads to help lead all priority areas and foundational activities, including community resilience and health. And I know that there are ongoing discussions about reaching out to Alaska Native organizations, nonprofits, and other local organizations in Alaska and the Arctic. So that will be a central feature of community resilience and health, and hopefully all priority areas and foundational activities as well. Meredith, do you have anything, or Larry, anything to add about specific deliverables or kind of work that team has done in the past related to this?
Meredith, why don't you go ahead and I'll follow up.
Sure. Yes, I will just note that there is currently a health and well-being collaboration team. One of the leads for that team is with the CDC, Dana Bruden, and they are working with this new PA1 team to decide exactly how those teams will integrate. I guess with regards to reporting, there is a lot of activity that is outside of the federal research that we do want to include in our reporting and make sure it's credited to those who are doing that research. And so that's something we're keeping in mind and bringing that in to get kind of a whole picture of an understanding of the health research with relation to the deliverables. So that is all I have to say at this moment.
Thanks, Meredith. And I guess what I'd just like to add is that, IARPC, just looking from the broader perspective, IARPC Collaborations has been remarkably productive over the execution of the previous Arctic research plans. And the reason is because so many people, so many great researchers and collaborators from so many different disciplines have come together and brought their expertise, their capabilities, their resources, their platforms, their contacts, and brought it all together and collaborated to take on these substantial objectives and to try and reach these goals together. And it's been really, really successful and really productive through all these collaborations, through these individuals working together. And so this is I won't say it's a new area of research for us, but it's an area that really needs a lot of work, particularly at this time. But I'm really optimistic that we can make a lot of progress, that we can really achieve these goals if we can get people to come together and take on these challenges together. And so I think right now this is a critical challenge for us, but it's something that's really needed. And it's something, there's a lot of good people, a lot of good expertise out there, a lot of great capabilities that we can bring together and really make some substantial progress in the next couple of years. And I'll stop there. Thanks.
So, there's a question about, or a comment about the overlap between the new teams and the foundational activity teams, and that coordination will take some thought to prevent redundancy. Do you want to talk a little bit about the coordinating structure?
Yeah, that's a great question, Jeff. Thank you. And it's a good reminder to talk about one of the newer components in the implementation structure of this implementation plan, which is the Biennial Implementation Plan Integration Group, which is a group that's made up of one federal lead from all of the different priority area and foundational activity teams. And they are going to be meeting relatively regularly every couple months to discuss essentially this, not just redundancy and making sure that everything's happening in sync and in a coordinated way, but looking for opportunities, challenges that are arising, shifts that we have to make in order to be responsive and adaptive. But this specifically is something that they'll be looking out for and making sure that we're not being redundant, but rather working together to make sure all elements are captured in a way that is not redundant, and that we're not reinventing the wheel and duplicating efforts. So I appreciate you pointing that out, because it's a very multidisciplinary and interconnected plan, and that is part of the reason that we have sort of a little bit of a new implementation structure. And so, yeah, we'll be keeping an eye out for it. Yeah, go ahead, Jack.
Yeah, I think this is kind of a follow-up to that question that you just read from the chat, but is it, I don't know if it's really set, but it seems like over time it might evolve, that a lot of the current collaboration teams will kind of redistribute themselves amongst the priority area and foundational area, just because a lot of the researchers that are active in those collaboration teams would have interest in new activities on these new teams, but limited bandwidth. And so do you envision over time that the communities of practice will be less prominent and these new teams will really carry most of the weight for IARPC in this new plan and the implementation of the plan?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it will be a little bit team dependent. I think in some cases, the communities of practice will largely integrate into the new collaboration teams, which are the priority area and foundational activities. We're trying to leave flexibility for now, so teams can kind of decide what's best for them and their communities. So I think it will vary a lot. And this, recognizing that we're in a transition period. We're moving from one way of implementing to another. So it will take a little bit of time for teams to kind of think through what works for them. And Greg, I see your hand up. Do you want to jump in?
Not jump in. Whenever you're done, build on, I would say.
Turn it over to you.
Okay. I guess the other thing I would say is throughout the history of IARPC, right, the collaboration teams, what are now the communities of practice, have often been places that ideas incubate and eventually become one of the official deliverables or objectives under a future plan. And so it could easily be that those sorts of activities continue under this current plan, that those communities of practice are working on things that may not be directly in the new biennial implementation plan, but are related and connected, and eventually, in the next plan, may be mature enough that some of them turn into deliverables in that. So a lot of the cutting edge work is done in the communities of practice, and we want to make sure to recognize that as well. So.
Can I just add, I think part of the beauty of these 2-year implementation plans is that they are a little bit more nimble than the 5-year Arctic research plan that's got sort of the higher level strategy. We've got these shorter term deliverables that let us react to things like, oh, now there's a COVID pandemic, which, the previous 5-year cycle didn't let that kind of nimbleness exist. And I think the IARPC collaborations community is really set up to be nimble in the same way now, where teams can, we have these established communities of practice that are really just these amazing communities, and they'll continue contributing. And then as things need to adjust, they can shift their focus as need be. So this community that you've all built is really an amazing thing. And so we're excited to see it evolve into the future.
And I'll just add on that the feedback that we've gotten is that people do get a lot of value from their communities, their disciplinary communities, and we want to continue to provide space for researchers to connect with others who are within their discipline. And so I don't see that need necessarily going away, but the actual form of the community might shift over time, as we've said.
Any other questions or thoughts?
We have time for maybe one, maybe two questions if you want to sneak in, be the last one. No pressure.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. On behalf of the whole Secretariat and everyone who's been involved in this process, it's been a great process, and we're all very excited to be moving into this next phase of implementation. So we hope to see you dispersed among the collaboration teams and work with you over the next 2 years. And feel free to reach out at any time to any of us with questions and thoughts. We're happy to chat anytime.
Thank you, everyone.